Hello, my name is Al Blumkin. This is the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network, and I'm here to discuss the career, life, and times of Stan Musial, whose 96th birthday is tomorrow. Stan is one of the greatest players ever, and he's, in my opinion, very underrated. Even though, his numbers basically speak for themselves, the reason I think he's underrated is that he was not a controversial person the way his contemporaries Joe DiMaggio and Ted Williams were. Musial never had any scandals, never had any negative things written about him. And he just went out there and did his job every day for 22 seasons.
Al, I'm Ralph Tyko. As you know, I want to interject here. He was on a par with those two guys, DiMaggio and Williams. He had as many All-Star appearances. His numbers hold up in every way. He doesn't have as much power as, say, Williams, but he has much more fielding skills and versatility. He played both left and first. He was really terrific, and I just want to reiterate, you're absolutely right. And I think one of the reasons he doesn't get as much acclaim is because of the inflated statistics, be they drug-induced or what have you, of today's athletes. Musial was right up there with Cobb in people's thinking before Bonds came along for one of the greatest left fielders in the history of ball. And so continue, Al. Didn't mean to interrupt you, but wow, he was terrific, wasn't he?
So he came up in 1941 in September and hit 426 in his limited appearances in that season. And a lot of people think, of course I wasn't around at that time, but a lot of people think
right.
If they had brought him up a month earlier, they might have challenged the Dodgers for the pennant that year.
And what year was this? 41?
41.
Ah, yes.
And then he became a regular in 42, and the rest was history. He missed the 1945 season due to serving in the Navy. He won 7 batting titles. He won 3 MVP awards in 1943, 1946, and 1948. And he played on 3 Cardinal World Champions, 1942, 1944, and 1946. Unfortunately, he was 25 years old in 1946, and that would be the last World Series he would get into.
Wow. Let's see. Thinking, had he played in this era with the Cardinals in, the 50s on, if he came up at that time, he would have made those, he would have played in a lot more World Series with the skills that he had.
Well, he retired after 1963, and they won everything in 1964.
Right. And they've been a solid franchise many years. He came up in the old Gas House Gang.
As they were fading out, but they had a lot of young players. And in 1942, they overcame the Dodgers. They won 106 games that season and beat out the Dodgers, who had won 104, which is tied for the most wins by a second-place team. The 1909 Cubs won 104 games, and they finished second to the Pirates that year, won 110. And the Cardinals went on and beat the Yankees in the World Series in a tremendous upset in 1942.
Let me talk about Stan a little from a personal nature.
Yeah, well, I was lucky enough to see him play. I basically saw him play when I went out to school in Pittsburgh in 1960, and I saw him play most of his last 4 seasons because the university was 2 blocks from Forbes Field where the Pirates played, and when I was there, I would go to practically every game. And I made sure every time the Cardinals came in, I would be there.
Wow.
And he was, toward the end, but he could still hit very well, and they would substitute for him in the late innings because he couldn't run anymore. But it was a tremendously sweet swing, and he wound up in 1963 finishing with 3,630 hits, and they were split down the middle as far as home and road. 1815 at home, 1815 on the road.
Well, nice.
And
that's an incredible stat. Exactly the same amount.
He had 330 in 1962 when he was 41 years old, and he feasted on the Mets, first-year Mets.
Oh, I know. He'd come in and kill them. Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. He used to. He got his nickname, the Man, from the Dodger fans in Ebbets Field, because he used to kill them.
Right.
Constantly.
Right. And but nobody hated him. He wasn't one of those guys that would be booed. He'd come in. People loved Stan the Man. I wanted to say that he's one of the last players to have played his entire career with one team. I mean.
Oh, yeah. In those days, that happened, quite a bit more frequently than it does now. He was an institution.
Well, you're a Pirate fan, and he came close.
Oh, very close, yeah. He was
to
from
becoming
Denora,
a Pirate, am I correct? He's from Denoria.
Yeah.
He was going to go back and play. Is there talk about that you remember, how close he came?
He came fairly close, but basically, for whatever reason, they didn't want him, because the Pirates in those days were not really in the forefront of signing prospects. The only 2 teams had any sort of a farm system, and that were the Cardinals and the Dodgers.
Yes, that's right.
And,
even into the 40s and 50s.
Yeah, so
right?
he came in through the Cardinals. He was signed by the Cardinals, and when he was in the minor leagues, he was actually a pitcher. He broke into the minor leagues as a pitcher, and was playing the outfield and pitching, and he fell on his pitching shoulder and hurt it badly. And
he didn't hurt it pitching; he hurt it
field.
Hurt the field. Ball player, yeah.
Yeah, and
didn't know that.
Yeah, his manager at the time was Dickie Carr, who managed to win 2 games for the 1919 Black Sox in the World Series that year. Dickie Carr was one of the honest ones. And Dickie Carr took Musial under his wing and turned him into a hitter, a position player.
Wow.
He never had the greatest arm in the world, and the later his career went, he played first base quite a bit. And,
right.
But as hitting, I'll tell you a story. When they had the 1992 Sabre National Convention in St. Louis, and we're sitting in there in a Cardinal panel, and Red Shaney was supposed to be there. And he came in late because the game, they were playing an afternoon game, and the game ended after extra innings. So Shaney came in uniform. He just changed the shoes to civilian shoes from the Spikes, came in, and then all of a sudden there's a murmur in the back. I was sitting close up to the front. There's a murmur in the back. Everybody turns around, and it's Stan Musial. He dropped in. He came up, and everybody, as everybody saw him coming in, everybody stood up and gave him a standing ovation that must have lasted 15 minutes.
Well,
he was given an honorary membership, and in one of the last directories that they published before everything went online, everybody has to declare their expertise. So he put down his expertise was hitting a baseball.
Or playing the harmonica.
Oh, yeah. And, he had a bad year in 1947 by his standards. By anybody else's standards, it would have been a very, very good year because he had his appendix frozen after the first couple of weeks of the season. I said, your appendix is bad. He had it frozen and didn't have it taken out until after the season was over because he didn't want to miss any time.
Whoa, he could have burst and he could have died from that.
And at one time,
absolutely do it.
At one time, he had a stretch of 895 straight games, which was, at that point, the National League record.
I'll tell you something else. That was before penicillin, too, if I'm not...
No, I don't know. Yeah, they froze it. They had
yeah, but I'm just saying, had it burst, I didn't know you could do that.
Yeah, but that prevented it from bursting, but of course...
how do you freeze into your appendix while it's in there?
It saps his strength somewhat.
No, but how does what is the procedure like?
I have no idea.
Freeze?
I'm not a doctor.
Oh, okay.
But anyway,
you misrepresented. You told me you were a doctor.
Yeah, right. And after that season was over in 1948, he came back and led the National League in everything except for home runs. He hit 39 home runs and missed the three-way tie with Ralph Tyko and Johnny Mize by one. He led in runs scored, RBIs, doubles, triples, hits, slugging, OPS, every offensive category that you can find except home runs. He never led the league in home runs. He came close a few times, but he never led the league in home runs.
Right. I think he had like 375 for his career.
475 was his career.
475?
475, yeah.
Wow, that's a solid amount for a guy who's not known for his home runs.
And for a while he had the record for most career home runs without ever leading the league.
Oh, wow. Did not know that.
In 1958, he became the 8th player and the first player since Paul Wainer in 1942 to accumulate 3,000 hits. There's a story in that because the Cardinals held him out. They were playing the Cubs in Wrigley Field when he got to 29.99 because they wanted him to do it at home. So they're playing the Cubs in that afternoon in Wrigley Field, and Fred Hutchinson, who was the manager at the time, sends him up as a pinch hitter in the 8th inning in a tie game. And of course, he had a double off Mo Drabowski, the Cub pitcher, and that was 3,000. And I remember as a kid being extremely excited because nobody had done that in my lifetime.
Wow.
Now, it's comparable to Ted Williams hitting his 500th home run because he was the first one since Mel Ott, and Warren Spahn when he won his 300th game in 1961 because he was the first one since Lefty Grove 20 years before. Those kinds of numbers were very, very hard in the 50s to come by. Very hard.
Yeah.
So when somebody accomplished something like that, it was monumental.
Let me say this. I'm a New York Giant fan growing up, and all you hear about in New York Giant history is Monty Irvin being our Stan Musial. Monty is our Stan Musial. Imagine, and I respect Monty so much, I respect the franchise so much. Imagine we're talking about a guy who is himself Stan Musial. He's not Monty is our Stan Musial. He is Stan Musial.
Well, Stan...
Nobody is more beloved. I've never heard or read or seen a film about anything that a negative thing about Stan Musial.
One of the things is he became somewhat invisible. When Ken Burns did his documentary on baseball, and he did the chapter on the 40s, the only players that you thought played the 40s at all were Ted Williams, Joe DiMaggio, and Jackie Robinson. He mentioned Stan Musial as an afterthought when he retired in the 1960s. And I thought that was very, very unfair. I said Musial had no controversy and no scandals, and he never was in the paper for anything negative.
Right, and that's probably it. Out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah, very placid personality.
Right.
And was not volatile like Ted Williams or standoffish like Joe DiMaggio.
Wonderful with the fans and the kids.
Oh, yeah.
I was an autograph collector, and I'd write him, I'd send cards or whatever for him to sign and write back. Always came right back in the self-addressed envelope, that kind of thing. He'd write on the envelope, Stan Musial. He'd autographed. Gracious, loving guy. Wow, this is nice to know, nice to do, to honor a man like this.
Yeah, so when I saw him at Forbes Field, and I would stand up every time he came up.
Yeah, just in
even though I get stares by some people, but he was of that magnitude.
Right.
And,
okay, I'm going to tell a quick story. It's 1963. It's Stan's last year, and I think he was going to retire, and he feasted so much on Met pitching that he came back for the 63 season.
Oh yeah.
I always thought that in my head, that he would have retired, but he saw expansion, and he went out with a decent year. So
he did get a hit his last time up.
Got to tell you stories. 1960. No, I think he did. He play in 64 as well.
Oh,
did he?
63 was his last year.
Okay, 63 is last year.
Yeah, they made a late run at the Dodgers, but they came up short.
Got to tell you a very, very funny story. My father had a boyhood friend from Poland, Stuchin, Poland. And my father went one way in life, and this fellow went and set up his fellow Jew, escaped the war, went to Brazil, set up his life in Brazil, a Sephardic Jew. And they came to visit in New York, and they brought with them, I'm 16, if I remember correctly, in 1963. They brought with them a Miss Junior Brazil daughter. Unbelievably, just absolutely gorgeous. She spoke no English, and I spoke no Spanish. And my parents said, well, why don't you take her to the ball game while she's here? Go to the game. You love baseball. So we're going to the game. My mother gave me bucks. We got box seats right down below. We're going to the game. We're going on the subway to the game, and I'm trying to explain. St. Louis Cardinals are coming in to play the Mets, and it's Stan Musial. And Stan Musial is fantastic, I kept saying to her. So this little conversation. Oh, the Cardinals, Stan Musial, fantastic. He's coming up, Stan Musial. He comes back to the dugout after he looks up at her, and she goes, fantastic. And he just looks up, and Riley says, you're pretty fantastic yourself, young lady, and walks right into the dugout. That was it. I went, but we had nothing to say, but bueno.
One of the things that he did, he was in practically every All-Star game when he was playing, and he hit in 1955 in the 12th inning. He hit a game-winning home run in the All-Star game in Milwaukee off Red Sox pitcher at the time, Frank Sullivan.
Remember him? Yes.
Yeah.
He's pretty solid.
What?
Good guy.
Yeah, Frank Sullivan, at one point, he was 6'6", and at one point, he was traded even up to Gene Conley, which is probably the tallest trade in the history of Major League Baseball.
Now, there's trivia.
Yeah.
That's very good. Conley played both. I think Sullivan played big time basketball.
He never played pro basketball.
Not college or anything. But Conley played both for the Celtics and pitched for the Braves.
Yeah, pitched for the Braves in Boston a little bit, and then Milwaukee.
Yeah.
And but Musial really could hit anybody at any time, and he just
he had that batting stance that was so interesting.
That stance, which nobody could copy. Anybody who could try to copy it couldn't hit like him anyway.
You couldn't copy it playing stickball.
No.
Right? In the streets of New York.
And he's just
that's what we do. We try to if somebody batted left, we'd have to bat left.
And he never gave umpires any grief. So, of course, when the pitchers were borderline, Williams was like this also. When pitchers were borderline, they would always get the benefit of the doubt.
Right. Oh, he'd get the corner.
I don't think he was ever thrown out of a game.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah. Off the subject of Williams, real quick before we close, because and that's Enos Slaughter. How good was he?
Enos Slaughter was a very good ball player. He hustled. He once was reamed out by a story I read. Is he once got reamed out by a minor league manager for not hustling, and after that, he always, he was noted for he was Mr. Hustle before Charlie Hustle before Pete Rose was Charlie Hustle.
Okay,
and he's a very good player.
I'll ask you: do you think he's deserving of Hall of Fame recognition?
It's borderline. It's borderline. The era he played in was not exactly an overwhelming offensive era. He's borderline. I know a lot of people think he was a racist. I read his autobiography a while back, and he was from the backwoods of North Carolina. So he's brought up with the prejudice. But I think once the black ball players started to come in, that he was very accepting. I think he got a bad rap. As being a racist when Robinson first came up. But he was very good. And, Slaughter, at the age of 40, in Game 3 of the 1956 World Series, he was on the Yankees by then, and they were trailing 2-0. A key 3-run home run in that third game to give way for the Yankees' victory, and it turns the whole series around for the Yankees.
Which is interesting because I can remember how much Billy Martin hated Enos Slaughter.
Oh, yeah.
Called him a National League player. Now, what was it? Try to explain that to me, the differences between a National League player, how Billy Martin meant that as calling Enos Slaughter a National League player.
Well, basically, Slaughter, one of the things you should know is when he was sent to the Yankees in the spring of '54, about 3 weeks after the Yankees had sold Vic Raschi to the Cardinals, there are pictures of Enos Slaughter sitting in his locker in the spring training and crying his eyes out because he was training for the Cardinals. I think Billy Martin meant that they didn't have as much desire to win as the Yankees.
Okay.
I mean, he played against teams in the American League that were pretty pitiful. The A's most of the time, the old Senators, and the Browns into the first few years of the Orioles. They were pitiful. Now, I think that he felt that the National League players were content to win the pennant or content to finish second or third, and that they didn't have the drive in them that the Yankees had to win everything every year.
Right.
Because the National League was a lot more competitive than the American League as far as the number of teams being in the race.
It used to. This answers a lot of questions because I used to think it was more out of jealousy. They were both overachievers, Billy Martin.
Oh, yeah.
And Enos Slaughter. And I think Billy might have been jealous of Casey's affinity for Enos Slaughter. He brought him back twice, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, they went to, after they got him in 1954 and mid-55, they sent him to their farm team in Kansas City in the American League.
Right.
Then when they needed him in 1956, they got him back.
Right.
But
okay, Al, it's time to introduce your new show that you're going to be doing with David Nemec. It's called Baseball Trivia is Not Trivial. And you and David are going to be doing it on a weekly basis. And you're not going to be hearing my voice on it. So not only you can stand up and give a standing ovation, but everybody out there could get to listen to some comfortably zoned radio network without Ralph Tyko. So that show starts very soon, and next Thursday, as a matter of fact, which is the Thursday after Thanksgiving, as a matter of fact. And I'm very proud to have you on the network. You're a jack of all trades. You're my Tommy Heinrich.
Thank you.
Solid as can be, and just wonderful to deal with you, Alan. It's a privilege for me. So thank you for helping me honor the great Stan Musial. We're going to retire number 6 in the zone. His number was number 6, and my favorite all-time ball player, Robbie Thompson, was number 6. And on another episode, I'm going to pay homage to Robbie Thompson. So
there's another guy,
just like, pardon?
By the name of Al Kaline, who wasn't too bad.
No, he wasn't. But he wasn't Ralph Tyko's favorite ball player either, was he?
Mine neither.
Okay. Or Al Blumkin's.
Yeah.
So for that reason, number 6 will go to Stan the Man and Robbie Thompson. Not that Robbie Thompson was a Stan the Man Musial career-wise, but much to say about an overachiever who I enjoy as a human being as well. Thank you, sir, and everybody out there, I hope you enjoyed it. I always learn from Al Blumkin.
Thank you, Ralph.
Sign us off if you would. Oh, I certainly will.
Okay.
Adios.
Good night.
Good night.